Morning, everybody. Welcome to Turnaround Tuesdays on Wednesday. We're having it on Wednesday morning this morning just because we were actually up in Taos at a gubernatorial forum yesterday, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to take a couple of seconds. I'm going to take a couple of seconds just to kind of get everybody up and running. And yep, you're seeing our chart here. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask people to start inviting some people to come on in. And start inviting some people. And actually, I'm doing the same thing right now. So anyway, hope everybody's doing well this morning as we get people invited to come on in. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. So invite your friends, get them over here. We'll talk about how we're going to fix our state. We got 12 people this morning so far. Good morning, good morning. I know there's some people over at work. I'm inviting a bunch of people, so be patient with me. All right. Now I'm trying to get out of here. We're here with Mitchell this morning. Hello, Mitchell.
How's it going, Jeff?
Good, good, good. Now I'm trying to get out of this box, but that's okay. Anyway, all right, everybody, give me some time here. As I was inviting people, and now I can't see, how in the world do I get out of here? Sorry, guys, now I'm trying to get out of this box. So, you want to help me, Mitchell?
Yeah, I was about to say.
This is Mitchell, everybody.
That's a good question. How do you get out of that box?
Okay. You know what? There you go. Perfect.
Nope,
there you go. Okay, Mitchell fixed it out for me. So thanks, Mitchell. Good morning, everybody. We're still waiting for some more people, but good. Thank you so much for being here today. Anyway, I appreciate, and Mitchell, if I get out of frame, either follow me or just let me know. Anyway, thank you guys all this morning for being here this morning. And there you go. Yep, there you go. So we're going to do a little bit different. Now, if you saw our video today or this week, we launched a new video this week. So it's about investing in New Mexico. And the number one thing everybody's been talking to me about is, well, wait a minute, Jeff, we got these $23 billion. Those are permanent funds. You can't just take the money out. You can't raid the money. You can't steal the money. You can't spend the money. Folks, we've never said that. And in fact, it's my opponents that don't understand how these funds work. So just to give you a little background on these funds. One of the funds, the land grant fund, literally started in 1900. Our federal government made us start these funds to basically be self-sufficient, self-reliant on ourselves. And all those funds come from land grants. They come from mining and oil and gas, things like that. And then then we actually begged our federal government for 12 years to become a state. And then we became a state in 1912. So this one land grant fund's been around for that whole time. Over the years, we've created the severance fund. We've also created the tobacco fund with the tobacco settlement, which, by the way, our legislators pretty much raid almost every year. That was the tobacco settlement that most every state's got, and we decided to create a fund with it. And then we have the water trust fund. And these are 4 different funds that literally go into our monies. Now, let me make this very clear, too. These are not our retirement funds for state employees. These are not retirement funds or para, as they call it. We're not talking about teachers' funds. We're not talking about union funds. We're not talking about our retirement funds. These are investment funds based off New Mexico. Now, the one fund, we all talk about the $23 billion, but the one fund, the land grant fund, is about $17-18 billion now. And the reason I say 17 to 18 billion, we have Bill McCamley, who's running for state auditor. He's come out with a new commercial basically saying they're now $24 billion. Last numbers we looked at, which is about 6 months ago, was $23.1 billion. So they are about $23 billion. Wouldn't surprise me they grew another $800-900 million over the last 7 months. They have grown almost $2 billion in the last year. So again, our State Investment Council has done a great job. Now let me tell you how these funds work. The governor chairs what they call the State Investment Council. The State Investment Council is made up of 11 board members, and those board members are the state treasurer, the land commissioner, the governor. The governor appoints 3 other positions, and then some legislators and some legislator appointees. So there's a board of 11. That 11 then hires an executive team, and the person that runs the State Investment Council is a gentleman named Steve Moise, very smart gentleman. And actually, I give Steve a lot of credit. He's done a fabulous job raising our funds and growing those funds in the last 10 years from $14 billion to $23 to $24 billion. And we'll talk about this chart in a second. But let's talk about these funds. We're not talking about spending the money. We're not talking about raising the money. If we were talking about taking these funds out of those funds and putting it into early child education, as some of the people that are supporting my opponent say, well, Jeff, we've been trying to take money out of early child education and allocate those funds to something else or to education. Not against that. In fact, as governor, I would sign that bill and make sure we took an extra 0.5% or percent that they're talking about into early child education. That's not what I'm talking about. These are investment funds for we basically live off for the future. And the way they were set up is, and the way they look at it is, if we literally use these funds, and the premise of it, to be very frank, is, well, those funds are for rainy days. Those funds are for our future when we run out of oil and gas, we run out of mining and stuff like that. I don't see us running out of those industries anytime soon. In fact, we want to diversify the economy and grow those industries and put some of that revenue back into funds that we can use and invest in New Mexico. Now, what we can do with these funds, state constitution tells us we can invest those funds. And there's some rules about that. So my opponents are the ones that really don't understand how these funds work. So let me read you something from our Constitution of New Mexico. And you might have seen a video we released yesterday. It's about 8 minutes long. You can kind of take a look at that. But Article 12 of the Section 7, Investment Permanent Funds, Paragraph B, the fund shall be invested by the state investment officer in accordance to the policies regulated by the State Investment Council. Now, we just talked about who the State Investment Council is. It's the governor and 10 other people. Paragraph C, in making investments, the state investment officer, under the supervision of the State Investment Council, shall invest and manage the funds in accordance to the Uniformed Prudent Investment Act. Now, who is that investment officer? Well, today it's a gentleman named Steve Moise. He's the CEO, and then they have some employees. And the State Investment Council deals with a company called Sun Mountain Capital. And Sun Mountain, they do a great job. They actually take our monies and they invest our monies for the state, and they grow those funds. And I'm not against that. In fact, they've done a very good job. But where do they invest those monies? They actually invest those monies in California, Oklahoma, Texas, Wall Street. They even invest 8% of it overseas. And that's great. And that's how they've grown these funds. Not against that. But there's nothing in the Constitution, there's nothing in the Prudent Investment Act that says we can't invest into New Mexico. All it says is we have to invest, and whatever returns we make in those investments, we literally have to give them back into the funds. And in fact, part of Article 12, Section D, Paragraph 1, not more than 65% of the book value of the fund shall be invested at any given time into corporate stocks. So what is that saying? That basically means that 65% of our capital, the $23 billion, only a max of 65% can be invested into Wall Street, into stocks and bonds and things like that. Any returns from that have to go back into the funds. Not more than 10% of the voting stocks of the corporation shall be held. And that means that we can't have more than 10% of those in voting shares, so we can't control companies and we can't control authorities in those companies, so that all of a sudden you could get the pay-for-play stuff. So we don't want to do that either. And then we can't hold more than 10% at any given time in cash. But the key is, Paragraph E of Section D, Paragraph E, any additions to the funds and all the earnings, including interest, dividends, capital gains from interest of the funds, shall be credited back to the fund. And that's what we're talking about. So we're talking about investing $1 billion. That's the state constitution, by the way. So we're talking about not breaking the state constitution. We're not talking about breaking the laws. What we're talking about is, I'm okay investing $22 billion of your $23 billion outside the state and get an 8% return. That's about what they're getting, anywhere from 6 to 8% return. The last few years, it's about 8.6. But what we want to do is invest $1 billion of that, $1.2 billion, back into New Mexico and make a return on that. Now, folks, there are 4 funds. There's the land grant fund that we talked about. There's the severance fund. And then we talked about the tobacco fund and the water trust fund. And actually, they raid those 2 other smaller funds all the time. Our legislators have literally taken tobacco fund money out to basically balance the budget some years. That's fine with me too. That's what that money's there for, actually. Our legislators and our governor can determine where that money goes to. The severance fund, by state constitution, by law, we can invest up to 9% of that fund, which is anywhere between 5 to 6. Last time I looked at it, it was about $5.2 billion. I have been told it's now up to $6 billion. By state constitution, we can literally invest up to 9% of that fund in New Mexico technologies, New Mexico businesses. In the past, we've done about $100 million of it. We've literally made about a 10% return. You can go Google the State Investment Council newspaper articles about a year ago after this campaign, when I basically called out the State Investment Council and talked to Steve Moise about it. They literally came out with an article about how they've invested in New Mexico industries in the past, and over a 20-year span has made a 10% return. Actually, a better return than they did by investing outside the state. So that's what we're talking about. So by state law, I can take 9%, and I shouldn't say I. The State Investment Council, with the leadership of the government and the State Investment Council Board, can take up to 9% and take 9% into New Mexico technologies. Now, folks, the state's not going to do that. That's why we have the Sun Mountains of the world. That's why we have experts that do that, and they're very separate from our state. And then they can invest those funds. Now, what we propose is create matching funds. So an example is, we would create a $50 million, we want to create a $100 million biotechnology investment fund where the state leads and invests into the biotechnology startups that we're doing every day today here. And then we want to get matching funds from biotechnology investors from outside our state, have a biotechnology investment fund firm, an expert in that, come in and manage that for New Mexico. And that's what we've talked about with the University of New Mexico, so I don't want to get into too much details here. So that's about what we're talking about. And all we have to do is invest those funds. So we're proposing to invest those funds. Now let's talk about this, and Mitchell, make sure you get this. So we've talked about, you might have seen some of our commercials, and you might have seen what we've talked about in our video. Colorado has 2.1% unemployment. They graduate over 95% of our kids. Their funds are actually $550 million, and they're probably higher now because this is about a year-old report. Last time I heard, they might be even $700 million. But that's Colorado. You look at California, sixth largest economy in the world. They literally have $8 billion. Now, New Mexico, and you've heard me talk about this, we literally have $23 billion in these funds. And these funds, and yes, a billion of that interest a year, literally goes out and goes into our education fund. So I get it, folks. We take the $23 billion, we invest it in other states to make a better return, and then we take $1 billion of interest and some of those monies, and we put it in education. So our education budget is about $3.2 billion between higher ed and public schools. $1 billion of that comes from these funds. Not against that. But I'm going to show you and you can see this, Mitchell, everybody can see this. I'm going to show you exactly what we can do, and this is on our video. So when you take a look at that, so here's our $23 billion. And we invested $23 billion, like we talked about in Wall Street. We invested into agriculture outside our country. We invest almost 6 to 8% of our monies outside our country into the global market. I agree with that 100%. We actually invested into bonds and stocks and other states. We actually put money in banks to collect interest at 1 or 2%, and that money sits there. And our State Investment Council says it's safe, and it is safe. But those banks literally take our money and will go invest those monies into Oklahoma, into Texas, into Arizona, into Colorado. That's what I want us to do here in New Mexico. Now let's take a look at this real quick. $23 billion. On average, the way we're investing it, we've been getting about an 8.6% return. By the way, this is a fabulous return. So congratulations to the State Investment Council, Steve Moise and Sun Mountain. They've been doing a great job. That then kicks out to about $24.9 billion with the interest that we do. So annually, we would grow these funds about $1 billion to $2 billion a year. We've seen that the last 2 years. That's why these funds are growing so much. Then they take $1 billion out annually to put it in the education budget to our schools. So on average, if we continue doing that, at the end of this year, we're going to have about $24 billion, $23.98 billion. Now, that's probably factual because now we have a state land audit. We have Bill McCamley running for state auditor. In his commercial, he's saying we have $24 million. Bill's actually a state representative. I talked to him the other day. He has actually seen updated reports. He says, Jeff, the last reports we looked at was $24 billion. So we know that's probably actual. So as we grow these principals and we continue investing outside the state, we'll continue getting that $1 billion for our schools. That's fantastic. Now that's the old way. Let's look at the Apple way, right? Team Apple's way. So if we take the billion invested in New Mexico, if you take the $22 billion that would be remaining and invest it and get the same return that we're getting with the State Investment Council, which is great, we would then get $23.1 billion. So yes, about $1 billion less, right? Because we've taken $1 billion out of the principal and now we've invested the principal into New Mexico. But if you take the $1 billion of New Mexico that we're talking about and investing it back into New Mexico, and the way we want to do it, we're anticipating a 2.5% return on that investment. Yes, folks, it's a lot less than what we would do if we invested outside the state. Now you get why they invested outside the state. You can literally make 3% increase over that. Understand that. But by investing that, you would still invest $1 billion and you would get about $250 million back on interest and on returns on investments investing into New Mexico. I'm okay with that. So in reality, by doing that, we would still have about $24 billion, almost $25 billion after this year in investments. You'd still have the $1 billion you could take out for your schools, and that would leave us with $23.925 billion. Right about the same. Yes, maybe about $600 million or maybe about $300 million less. But folks, look at this. As we invest $1 billion and we invested just that in 1 year, because we know we're going to grow more jobs than this, but just in 12 to 18 months, we would literally generate about 100,000 new jobs in our state. And if you take those jobs and you take just the average salary of those jobs, and we know some of them would be economic based jobs, would be probably between $70,000 and $80,000. But the rest would, even if you take the lower average household income of $43,000, $45,000, folks, you're talking about $400 million in tax revenues for our state. Additional tax revenues for our state. So by investing $1 billion back into New Mexico and investing $22 billion outside New Mexico and make a less return, we still have $1 billion for our schools, but we would create 100,000 new jobs in the first 12 to 18 months, and we would generate an additional $400 million of tax revenue. At the end of it all, their way, our principal would be almost $24 billion. Our way, our principal would be 24.3 or $0.4 billion. We would literally net out the state an extra $375 million for our state, at the same time creating 100,000 new jobs. Now that's what we would do in year one. Well, we say between 12 and 18 months. So maybe a year and a half. But by doing that, the economy starts turning, the economy starts improving, and then we basically start investing back into New Mexico. And this 100,000 jobs over a 6-year period would create 225,000 new jobs. And last week, we talked about where those jobs would come from. And go to our Facebook page, go to our website page, we actually have it broken out. Because we're not just going to invest $1 billion just anywhere. We're going to invest it into industries that we know that we can do it. And we can do it through our banks. We can do it through programs that we actually have in our state. We literally have states with programs within economic development within our state and within our community banks that the State Investment Council sets the guidelines. As governor, I'm going to lead the State Investment Council to make sure those guidelines are set so our banks can take these monies and invest it into New Mexico industries, New Mexico businesses. The state's not going to do it. So those are things that we can do right now. So I hope Mitchell's going to adjust the camera a little bit, so if it moves a little bit, I apologize. But I hope that makes sense to everybody. And so so you can kind of see immediately, sorry, I know we're going to go a little crazy here, but you can see a little bit now that, that we can kind of fix our state, and generate new jobs and new opportunities for New Mexico. Now, while everybody's getting dizzy real quick,
Sorry.
I'll hold on. We'll get Mitchell get the. All right, there we go. Okay, I'm watching it on TV now, or I'm watching it on the screen now, so I think we're good now. So I think we're good now, so we'll go back to it. So you can see, those are opportunities for New Mexico. So we're not going to take the money out. We're not going to take the money out. We're not going to spend the money. We're not going to waste the money. We're not going to give the money away. We're going to invest the money back into New Mexico industries. And you can see right here where we're going to do it. And so that's what we're talking about. We have to start looking at things differently. We have to start investing things differently. So, so one of the questions that continues to come up is, well, Jeff, what about government? What about things that might be happening within our government? Look, We have programs set up right now in the State Investment Council, which is a separate entity, basically invest our money back into, invest our money. They invested through Sun Mountain, they invested through other venture capitalist companies, and they invested into hedge funds and other opportunities. So I know how these funds are. To simplify it, this is our 401k. Everybody, it's this simple. We have a checking account, that's our operational account. On average, anywhere from 6 to 6.5, this year probably $7 billion runs through that checking account. Then we have a savings account, and that's the reserves that we try and put away, and we try and put 5 to 10% of that operational account away. So keep in mind, at your home, you have a checking account, and that's what you write the bills from. Then you always have a little savings account over here in case for your car breaks down, or in case you got to fix the roof, or in case you got to, want to go on vacation or something like that, or 1 month you're short on that operational account. You have a little savings account. Then you have your retirement. State employees, you might have your pension from work. Police officers, first responders, your pension, your 401ks. That's what we're talking about. Now, let me remind everybody, these monies are not they're not teachers' retirement funds. These are state funds for the future of our state. So they're actually the state mutual funds, or they're state savings accounts. And they're there for, unless we ever have a major downturn in our economy, if oil and gas or our minerals go away, we can literally use these funds. And what you hear from legislators is, hey, look, Jeff, those funds are there to help us fund some of our education program. You can see we can still do that, number one. Number two, that's why we were talking about diversifying our economy and growing our economy, so we can put more funds away for the state. Maybe not into these funds, but more funds into the state. And the way we want to set up our diversification, as we grow these extra tax revenues, we want to put those surpluses, and we have a plan to put a third back into education, a third back into business programs that literally help fund more New Mexico businesses, and then the other third would go back into more of these funds for our future. So that's kind of our game plan. So I hope that makes sense to everybody, and I think we're starting to get questions, Mitchell. So here's Zena. Is it Zena? What are you planning for nursing homes? Well, Zena, again, the nursing homes, I guess if they're private, let me try and diversify the question. If we invest into it, if the banks want to invest into nursing homes and expand the private nursing homes, and we make it a 2.5% return, I'm okay with that. But in the nursing homes, specifically the state nursing homes that we've talked about, we would actually invest, and that's a whole different budget. There's called capital outlay. So as we grow our jobs and grow the economy and we grow those surpluses, you can see we can grow $375 million additional. This is all surplus. This is new tax revenue for the state, net tax revenue for the state. It's actually about $400 million. This year with oil and gas, it looks like we might have over $800 million of surpluses that will probably go into dollars or into funds, what they call capital outlay. It's a whole different another budget of money. And folks, we haven't even talked about capital outlay. Capital outlay is anywhere from $2 to $3 billion that sit in banks that we can literally invest and get back into our communities as well too. So, but what we want to do, Zena, with nursing homes is we want to make sure specifically state elderly and nursing programs, we want to make sure we're getting federal matching funds and get state funding and make sure we're doing that and improving that. Now, I've been traveling for about a year now campaigning, and we're talking about capital outlay needs to go to some more of these organizations, more of these funds as we kind of move forward on that. One of the other questions I'm getting is, Jeff, how are you going to, this is from Bob the other day, how are you going to invest that $1 billion? Bob, that's a good question. The Economic Development Department actually has a program for small businesses that they can get low debt finance loans. Now, these usually do are 0% loans, kind of get companies off the ground. What we want to do is we want to expand that industry. We want to expand that business or that model. We have never fully funded that program. That program was developed years ago, but we've never really funded the program. In fact, this governor from my group, we've been pushing her a little bit to fund that program. They literally funded it with $2 million with federal grant money. And that program now is run through economic development. The problem is they're going to be giving you 0% interest loans at about $5,000, $10,000, maybe $50,000 loans. That might be okay for small business, but it really gets you off the ground. It doesn't really help you expand your business. We want to get our $1 billion not only in some of these programs, but into biotechnology, into cybersecurity investment funds. where we can invest into technology, help those companies grow. Those are high-paying jobs. But then get the monies working in our community banks and invest in our community banks. The State Investment Council can work with our community banks and set priorities on how we can do that. So we can do that very easily. At the same time, right now, capitalization, the way we have our bank system set up, is they have to have a 1-for-1 or 102% equity versus the deposits we put in there. We think the State Investment Council can lower those guidelines a little bit, which will get more money invested out into New Mexico. So, Bob, I hope that makes sense. Anyway, this is Eva. What would you do for the local economy, for local municipal? Is that it? Municipals?
What would the local economic multiplier effects be on local communities by investing?
Multiplier effects. Okay. So Eva, what would the local economic multiple effects be by investing these funds? Eva, that's a great question, by the way. Look, as we invest into these funds, or as we invest into New Mexico, we know specifically economic-based jobs. And what's an economic-based jobs? Those are jobs that basically last over 20 to 30 years that have some kind of training for it, whether it's a tech job, a programming job, a trade skill job, a welding job. Those jobs pay usually between $60,000 and $80,000 a year, and they call their economic-based jobs. Out of our 225,000 base jobs, we think 80 to 100,000 of those jobs would be those type of jobs. But that's a good question, Eva, because for every one of those jobs we create, it literally creates a multiple of 2 to 3. Now, our multiples of 225,000 new jobs, or this multiple right here, we're actually using 1.8. So for every job we create, it usually creates 2 to 3 new jobs. We're actually using a 1.8 job because I'm trying to be conservative on the job growth. But even that, you can see. And then when we look at, we've talked about different industries, film and television. There are 16,000 direct jobs in film and television today. And they basically pay 18 to 38 bucks an hour. We know for a fact that those 16,000 jobs, direct jobs in the movie and television industry, have an effect on about 20 to 30,000 other jobs, whether it's hotel services, whether it's catering services, construction services. We know when a movie studio comes in and is going to build a set. Well, guess what, folks? They're not bringing the wood in. They're not bringing those sets in from California. They're actually going to Rax. They're actually going to Lowe's. And I'm pushing for Rax just because Rax is a locally based business or locally based company. So we want to push local first. And so they're buying those products from local hardware companies like Rax in New Mexico. They have one in Los Lunas. They have 2 here in Albuquerque. So it actually helps their industry grow, and so we're talking about those too. Donna, health insurance from disabled individuals under 65 have very high out-of-pocket costs. How would you help? Donna, that's a great question. Mitchell, I'm getting used to your handwriting, baby. Sorry, everybody. Anyway, that's a great question, Donna. First of all, we have found let me tell you something about my family. When I was at Univision, or whether it was at AOL or a big company or a small company or startup company, healthcare costs 32 years ago. I've been in the entertainment business for 32 years. 32 years ago, the average healthcare cost per employer for small business or big businesses were anywhere from 8 to 12% of their budget. Today, a year ago, I left Univision to get ready to run for governor. Today, it's about 37%. So our healthcare costs have gone up so much, it's 37% cost for businesses. Now, a big company like Univision might be able to absorb those costs per employee. Those are benefits we give. There are also tax deductions for big companies, not tax deductions for small individuals. And so those actually help. By doing that, so that's one of those. As I have left that industry, now I'm a self-employed person as an independent contractor. My family, we actually pay $21,000 to $23,000 a year net for healthcare costs. Now, I probably have a higher premium because I'm a cancer survivor of 38 years. I want to make sure my children and my sons are very protected. So those are things we're talking about. But you're right. Disabled individuals under 65, out-of-pocket costs have gotten very high. So we have to work with our insurance companies, and that's why, Donna, we've been talking about a single-payer system or self-insured system. We've looked at 3 different systems, both on a national level and a local level, that has literally helped turn can literally help lower our cost. We then also have to work for pharmaceutical companies. One of my opponents has literally taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from pharmaceutical companies through her career to help her run for Congress. She's taken the same amount of money to help her run for governor. She's then helping these pharmaceutical companies push pill mills into our state or drive cost up into pharmaceuticals. And if you dig into it, the two most expensive part that's driving our costs in healthcare is pharma and insurance costs. So what we have to do is we have to bring down those costs, and we have a plan that we can bring down pharmaceutical costs by almost 60 to 80%, we believe, at least for 50% of the prescription drugs in our state. Already 50% of our state is on some type of single payer system between Medicaid and Medicare anyway. So we can do that automatically. But saying that, as we insure ourselves and we look at a single payer system, out-of-pocket costs will go down. And then we can raise Medicaid fees up. We have literally cut our Medicaid fees. So a lot of our doctors don't want to take any of our Medicaid or Medicare patients because we've cut their fees. We actually, by raising their fees, making sure doctors are being paid fair and an increased basis, we can lower your costs, lower out-of-pocket costs, but actually increase fees for our doctors and get more doctors here. And Donna, you can go to apo18.com, apo18.com. Look at our jobs plan, look at our education plan, but we have a health plan there too that you can take a look at that too. This is either Joel or Joel. Joel. What factors would you have to invest the council consider determining how to invest within state? Well, again, Joel, that's a great question. But again, I don't want to create the factors. What we want to do, so an example is, we know out of the severance fund, we can take $420 million, or it's even probably more now. We know we can take 9% of that fund, which is $5 to $6 billion. So let's say it's $500 million. We have actually invested about $150 million in the past into New Mexico Industries. Our proposal is the State Investment Council works with Sun Mountain, and they create multiple funds to kind of start doing that. Then they're the experts, and they want to invest into that. What we want to do is we want to take, an example is, the University of New Mexico is one of the top biotechnology research institutions in the country. They've created over 400 biotechnology patents, and they've created over 50 patents that are now being commercialized. Majority of them have left our state. There's 8 here. So what we want to do is we want to create a biotechnology investment fund, right? And we can use the Sun Mountains. My proposal is, can we bring in the experts within biotechnology investment funds? There's literally billions of dollars out there looking to invest. So what the investors are doing right now is they sit around, they wait for us to incubate these companies, then they swoop in and invest, and they invest into these companies $4 or $5 million, and they take our companies out. What we want to do is create a biotechnology fund, put $50 million into it, and then have the private sector put another $50 million into it, and then we have a $100 million biotechnology fund investing into biotechnology companies coming out of the University of New Mexico or our labs. Happens every day here, Joel. Happens every day here. It's just those companies are leaving. When you look at that long-term investment and that long-term infrastructure, we literally feel like we can create 20 to 30 direct jobs over the next 6 to 8 years within that biotechnology industry. Now you can go look at University of Pennsylvania, you can go look at Philadelphia, you can go look at North Carolina, you can literally go look at other cities, you can go look at Boulder. They're literally taking our patents and our research here. So we're set up to basically do all this research and do all this publishing. We're not set up to do the manufacturing and the making. That's why we create companies all the time here, or ideas here, and they leave. We want to change that. So those are ways we would do it. Investing into small business, we want to put those monies and create guidelines for our community banks. Community banks, their model is to invest into the community, invest into small businesses, invest into your community. And we want to be, they're the experts. So we want to make sure they're the experts on that. I don't know how long we've been going, Mitchell. 35 minutes. Okay, guys, we're at 35 minutes. I do have one more question. How will your plan for healthcare help small businesses? Catherine, that's a great idea, or that's a great question. We talked about healthcare businesses earlier. Again, 35 years ago, when I got into the media business, the average cost for benefits was basically 8 to 10% of the company's cost. Today it's 37, 38%. Folks, small business in New Mexico or across the country, small business, their profit margins are anywhere from 6 to 12%, right? Their profit margins are very low. You throw healthcare costs on top of them to carry healthcare costs for their businesses, literally could put them in the red. That's why a lot of small businesses in New Mexico don't offer healthcare coverage for their employees, because it would literally put them out of business, because you can't run that way. So what we have to do is we have to lower costs for everybody, and that's what we talked about, our healthcare plan. So Catherine, if you go to our website, apo18.com, take a look at our healthcare plan. We think the New Mexico Health Securities Act. We think looking at other plans like Medicare for All that we've talked to our federal leadership with, or looking at different models, we can literally lower everybody's costs. We feel almost 30, 40, even 50% doing that. And that would allow individuals to buy healthcare costs, or even some small businesses to offer healthcare costs through them. We have to get everybody in the system and look at that system. At the same time, we have to lower insurance costs. We have to lower pharmaceutical costs, right? And then we have to raise Medicaid, Medicare fees, or those fees we believe we can do as we do that. At the same time, Catherine, we can literally, as we create jobs and we create opportunities for folks, we know there's about 100,000 New Mexicans today. Actually, there's 1 million New Mexicans today that are living on some type of government assistance within Medicaid, Medicare coverage. We know that there's about 100,000 unemployed or underemployed. It's almost 300,000, but we know there's a direct 100,000 New Mexicans that are on Medicaid, Medicare that can't find a job or are underemployed. And as we grow the economy and grow jobs, not only will we be able to lower those costs, but get them off those state programs and get them into more of a single payer system and a better paying job that helps everybody out. Anything else, Mitchell? Because I'm seeing we want organic, sir. Sunshine. And I know we've been kind of going back and forth on some other different things. Sunshine, thanks for the question. Organic, absolutely. In fact, I talked to some farmers up in Taos. We were up in Taos yesterday, Sunshine, and I talked to some farmers yesterday about organic farming. And the organic farming is great, but what's happening is we now have about 4 or 5 organic farms up in northern New Mexico. And they're growing organics for not only their self, but they're also growing it for small businesses or small restaurants. And I apologize. Sorry, everybody. I had a sneeze there. And yes, I sneeze 5 times, usually 4 or 5 times, so I apologize. And so I had to get off screen there for a second. I'm sorry. Anyway, so our job, our Sunshine, our idea here is to create a co-op create co-ops, and we can create co-ops within the apple industry. We've talked about creating co-ops within hops. And Claudette, thank you, and Colton and everybody saying for bless you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Robert, thank you. But we can literally create co-ops, and we've talked about creating co-ops in organic farming. We've talked about creating co-ops within hops and barley. We've talked about creating co-ops within apple growth. But my goal is not just grow our own. By the way, if we just grew our own and sold it to our own and stopped importing, we import 94% of our goods. If we just did that, we would literally almost wipe out unemployment or underemployment in our state. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but my goal is let's grow hops, barley, organic vegetables and fruits. And not only for New Mexicans, but let's export those outside our state as well, too. So anyway, I know we have 31 people tuned in today so far. Looks like we've had over 70 people within the last 30 minutes. We have been on the air now for about 35, 38 minutes. We got one more question in. I'll take one more question, then an end turnaround Tuesday on Wednesday. What's
How about net neutrality?
Oh, okay. I was going to say net neutrality. Okay. Eva's asking about net neutrality. It's an issue. I come from the media world. Net neutrality is an issue. But anytime you start giving too much control, I look at the internet as, I'm a broadcaster. I spend 32 years in the broadcasting business. I look at it as free airwaves. And so we have to protect the user side also. I get the business side of it. Look, I come from that industry. I get the business side of it, but we have to protect that. So I was against some of the framework and some of the things they put together with that. But now they've actually seemed to kind of go back the other way and protect it. I can tell you right now as governor, we're going to invest both on a federal level, nonprofit level, and a state level on a full infrastructure for broadband around our state. Half our state does not have broadband. At the same time, we want to make sure that we protect our users based on that as we kind of move forward. There's one more question I see out there about legalizing cannabis. We'll take two more questions. Legalizing cannabis. Go to our website, apo18.com. We have actually a 6-page document. In the last 2 years, and I know one of my opponents yesterday at the Taos Forum said that New Mexico didn't have medical marijuana back in 1978. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, talk to me or talk to the medical patients that used medical cannabis for 10 years under the Medical Research Act that we did here. You tell me we didn't have medical marijuana. I think it's a whole political ploy. So to basically tell us, for Senator Cervantes to basically say that Jeff Apodaca or other patients were not under the medical cannabis laws and we're breaking the laws and we're not following the laws, I just disagree with him. Because he's trying to take credit now. Him and Grisham are now trying to take credit how they brought medical cannabis because they know this industry is supporting us. Look, I just want to protect medical cannabis patients, expand this program. My two opponents, one has said, let's research it more. You put a perfect bill on my desk. We need to look at some more people. We need to have more conversations before I sign a bill. Cervantes has said, he literally said, we're not mature enough. I think that was his phrase. We're not mature enough. We're not Colorado. We're not mature enough. Have no idea what that means in a state that's been around for over 100 years, in a state that's losing jobs to those other states. So you have to look at our strengths. We are the only candidate, we're the first candidate to say we would legalize cannabis for adult use. I've literally sat down with Governor Hickenlooper and his Colorado staff. We've talked about it. I've talked to people from Canada. I've talked to people from Israel. I've talked to other states. We've learned the good and the bad between Oregon. We've learned the good and the bad between Colorado. We feel that we can get a bill through the legislators this year and get it legalized and have it up and running by July of next year. So our plan is, I believe that the legislature really hasn't pushed it because they knew there was a Governor Martinez that was going to veto it. Now as governor, I will lead and say, let's get something together. I believe we can get a bill together. We can legalize it by next January 2019 in my first session as governor. Then we'll get it legalized and we'll legalize it by July. Then what I will want to do is push for a constitutional amendment so a next governor can never change it again. Or we change that. I don't want to put industries out. So those are things that we've been talking about, and we're going to protect medical cannabis, expand our medical cannabis, and also grow hemp. Now we know we can do adult right away. Medical cannabis today, we have over 50,000 medical cannabis patients. We only produce enough for about 30% of them. So we've actually created our own black market. So when you compare cannabis pricing in New Mexico versus the rest of the country or our regional states, we actually have one of the highest costs of medical cannabis. And then we've created a black market. So we want to expand medical cannabis immediately, have our growers go from 450 to a minimum of 1,000 plants, and then we want to expand the plant count based on the demand. Don't want to put a cap on it. I want to make sure we're giving enough products that we want to make sure the demand's out there. So those are things, and you can go to our website, apo18.com, to take a look at that. Kenneth is asking about Farm for Fork programs. These are, and Kenneth, I think I know what you're talking about. These are programs for our veterans. And let me talk about our veterans. And we're very blessed and very fortunate. We have a lot of veterans groups up north, down in Doniana, that have endorsed our campaign. Folks, we have to take care of our veterans. Our veterans are some of the most important people. Per capita, we have the highest percentage of per capita of veterans. Our New Mexicans have served our country so well, and we really haven't done too much for them. So out of the investments that we've talked about, we're going to put some of those investments into small debt loan finances for small veteran businesses. Today we have 152,000 New Mexico businesses, small businesses. 15,000 of those are veteran businesses. We have to work with the veterans to not only help them start businesses, but here's another example. By federal agreements, our federal contracts, our federal labs can do up to 6% of subcontracting with veterans businesses. Today we do less than 0.5%. So my goal as governor is to get our veterans up and running, get our veterans within industries and help them start industries, and then go get some of those federal contracts, local preference contracts, that we can get almost up to 6% of those federal contracts. If we just got 6%, that would literally generate about another $20 million into economic growth in the state of New Mexico. And then we know the multiples on that. So at the same time, what we've talked about with our veterans, we want to create these community programs and community outreach programs. 60% of our veterans don't have benefits. So veterans, if you're listening to me, let's get you signed up for your benefits. Let's make sure we're helping get you your benefits. By getting your benefits, in our state by helping you start businesses, by helping you grow farms like Farm and Fork that will help our veterans and grow agriculture and start industries for them. Folks, we're looking at almost $2 billion of economic growth. If 100% of our veterans had their benefits and they would get $2,000 to $3,000 a month into the economy, because that's what they would do. If our veterans were taken care of and our veterans got their full benefits and we helped them start industries, we're looking at a $2 billion injection into our economy just with our veterans. So we have to take care of our veterans and take care of those type of programs that we're talking about. And Kenneth, those are great programs. So if you're involved in those programs, those are fantastic programs. Anyway, everybody, we're at the 40-minute mark. I'm going to sign off. I hope you understand how we're investing into these funds. I hope you understand what we're doing. So we're not taking the funds out. We're not going to spend the funds. We're not going to raid the funds. So it's actually my opponents that have literally been in office for over 50 years who say they understand these funds. And guess what? It's them that don't understand the funds. And in fact, I know for a fact they have been told by other legislators, by some of the party leadership, hey, Jeff is not talking about raiding those funds, spending those funds, or taking those funds out. He's talking about investing those funds. I just read you the state constitution. There's nothing that says we can't invest into New Mexico. What we have to do is any investments we invest into New Mexico has to go back into those funds. Never said I disagree with that. At the same time, when people ask, well, Jeff, what happened if they're high risk investments and we lose those funds or we lose some of that investment? Hey, that's probably going to happen. But guess what, folks? That happens every day with our $23 billion. You just don't hear about it. Are you telling me when we invest into Wall Street and Wall Street drops 15, 20 points that we don't lose $1 billion? We don't lose $500 million of our valuation? Absolutely that happens. You just don't hear about it. In fact, until our campaign, you didn't even hear about these funds. You didn't even hear about the growth of the funds. Not that my opponents or the State Investment Council has kept it secret. They just have never wanted to make a point of it because they like the way they're doing it. Now, let me just tell you, I'm not against the State Investment Council. I'm not against our legislators. I'm not against John Arthur Smith, who says, Jeff, you're not going to touch these funds. I'm not going to take the funds out. I'm not going to raid them. I'm not going to spend them. I'm not going to jeopardize our future. But folks, it's time we start investing back into New Mexico. What we're talking about is just taking 5%, just 5% of those funds. By state constitution, we can take 420 to 500 million of those funds and invest into New Mexico industries out of one of those other funds. I have never, ever said I am going to take or raid the funds out of the land grant fund. Never said that. My opponents have said that because it's my opponents that don't understand how these funds work. Yes, folks, I may not have political experience, but let me ask you something. I'm literally running against two people that have over 50 years political experience in the next 3 weeks. And Steve Pierce has another 30 years experience. I'm literally running against three people that have 70, 80 years of political experience. I have one question for you. How's that working for us? Their way, the status quo, has driven us to the highest unemployment in the country, 50th in education, 50th in job creation. Oh, but we love being number one in opiate addiction, number one in homeless, number one in crime. Folks, 25% of New Mexicans live below the poverty line. That's 500,000 New Mexicans. 50% of New Mexicans, 1 million people, live on some type of government assistance. Sinful. Sinful when we invest $23 billion outside our state to grow our wealth and then take $1 billion of that back into our schools. Not against that. But you can see by taking $1 billion of it and investing into New Mexico, we still take $1 billion to our schools, but we generate 100,000 jobs just within the first 18 to 24 months and generate over $400 million of new tax revenues annually. And folks, by year 6, 225,000 new jobs, $1.8 billion of new tax revenues, and yes, services will go up. State employees will get 3% raises every year under an Apodaca administration, and we're going to make it a law where every state employee gets 3% forever. And same with our students and our teachers. Same with our teachers. We've already have a plan that we're going to get our teachers at $43,000, $47,000, and $55,000 a year. And now I got a congresswoman that has literally plagiarized our educational plan. And that's what they've done. So I ask you, you like being 50th? I don't. I can't comprehend being 50th. Jackie and I moved home 9 years ago to raise our children and be close to grandparents. And we sat around for 9 years watching my opponent say, it's my turn, Jeff. Get out of the way. I'm running for governor. It's my turn. I have all the political experience. I'll ask you one more time. How's that working for us? It's not. So folks, we're 3 weeks away. 3 weeks away from changing New Mexico, turning New Mexico around. This is a moment. There's not many of us that have this moment in our life. This is a moment that you'll look back on and say, did you make the right decision? Early voting starts this Saturday. I ask you to go out and early vote. Voting June 5th. If we don't turn New Mexico today, if we don't invest in New Mexico today, if not now, then when? And if not us, clearly not them. They've driven us to where we're at today. So we're the only campaign talking about how we're going to create 225,000 new jobs. We're the only campaign talking about how we're going to invest $1.2 billion into New Mexico's economy and get our money back, still have $1 billion for our schools, and create over $400 million a year in new tax revenues within the first 18 to 24 months. And within 6 years, $1.8 billion in new tax revenues. Don't tell me what we can't do. That's what my opponents do. As governor, I'm going to tell you what we can do. What we can do is invest in New Mexico. I just showed you. What we can do is grow the economy. I just showed you. What we can do is move 8% of PED's budget from the top back and down to our classrooms. Pay our teachers more. Give them an annual raise every year. Empower our teachers, our principals, our superintendents. And yes, we're going to get rid of the park test and literally show them other ways. Don't tell me we can't legalize it. Don't tell me we're not mature enough to invest into ourselves and to create opportunities for New Mexicans. I just don't believe that. I believe we're mature enough to do exactly what we're talking about. So I ask you, what if? What if you invest into Jackie and I? What if you invest into Jackie and I and invest into a new world for New Mexico, to turn New Mexico around, to help families up out of poverty, help our teachers up, our nurses up, our state employees. Every state employee, 3% raise annually. Every teacher educator, 3% raises annually. Our police officers, our first responders. We have to start investing into ourselves and improving our own economy. And that's what our campaign's about. So if you like what you hear, I ask you, we're going to be on TV through the end of the campaign. We need some more money to make sure that the big money, corporate money, doesn't come in and just wash out our message. If you like what you hear, I'm asking you for your donations. Go to apo18.com and make a donation. If you can't make a donation, come down and volunteer. Make phone calls. We've already reached almost 35,000 New Mexicans that are supporting us. We need 75 to 80,000 for you to show up and vote for us. That's what we're looking at. And then we need you to canvass and tell your friends. And every one of you, tell 10 of your friends, share this video. Share our 8-minute video that literally lines this out. And if you have more questions, email the campaign. I want to thank you all again for being here on a Wednesday for Turnaround Tuesday. We'll be back next Tuesday for Turnaround Tuesday. 3 weeks to go, folks. I ask you. And tonight, go to our Facebook page. We're actually having a meet and greet tonight here in Albuquerque. If you're in Albuquerque, come on out tonight and talk to us. Meet Jackie and I and visit with us some more. Anyway, God bless you guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, everybody. God bless you.